All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Mike Murphy. Mike, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
I'm very excited to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Same. I mean, and I really appreciate the conversation that we got to have ahead of doing this podcast interview today. And like you, yeah, I am totally stoked to have this conversation and get it out there and share it with a lot of other amazing entrepreneurs. I want to start really quick though. I want to give a shout out to Brianna and the folks over at the Interview Valet platform because you and I, Mike, we probably wouldn't even have met if not for them. And
Yeah, no
I am
doubt.
incredibly grateful to Brianna because that gal, she's continually reaching out to me and going, "Hey, Kev, here's somebody else that I think would be a really great guest for your podcast." And man, she's never steered me wrong. And so Brianna, if you hear this, I appreciate you. And so,
Ditto. Yeah, because I mean, she obviously from my perspective, I get to I would never have been able to, to find you and then to have the opportunity to talk to you and, share this conversation is great. So yeah,
yeah.
definitely a tip of the hat to the folks over at Interview Valet.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we start, Mike? I'm going to start by just kind of turning it over to you. I want to
Okay.
be able to set some context here for our listeners and let them know a little bit about who you are and what you're all about. So let's talk about. I'm going to kind of encompass a lot, and I'll just like let you pick and choose which direction
Sure.
you want to go. But I want to just have you share, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you do and the impact you're making in the world, and also give us a little bit of the backstory of how you got into
Right.
doing what you do and stuff.
Yeah, I think that I mean the two are related. I think maybe I'll build to the on the why
Okay,
with
perfect.
kind of the past because I think it's informative and it kind of sets the stage. So my background is 40 plus years in the healthcare and insurance space. I started my journey inside a large company and worked there for about 15 years, 13 and a half. I didn't even have a resume together and was doing the classic kind of going up the corporate ladder thing. And really, at the end of the day, look back on that very fondly. I made a lot of amazing connections, relationships, and some of the relationships we'll talk about today were very the formative years that were mentors and Sherpas that I had there that helped guide me along the way. But I also, got to know myself a little bit better, and I realized that necessarily having a bigger job wasn't going to be having a better job for me spiritually. That I'm not really a house cat. I'm a little more feral, right? So I needed to do something a little more entrepreneurial instead of being
Uh-huh.
part of the gigantic, great company. But at any rate, moved out and started my journey. I did started, working at a very small company and learned a different kind of pressure. And we sold our business to United Healthcare, and so I got to participate in that and help build United Healthcare's dental business. And then I did a series of what I would describe as intrapreneurial, which is buildy, fixy, changey things inside of larger organizations. And I would describe that as just okay. It's be very wary of the larger organizations saying they want to do something fundamentally different because a lot of times fundamentally different means they want a different outcome, but they're really not interested in doing something truly different to affect that outcome. So,
Okay.
great lessons learned, and I don't regret any of it. And again, met some amazing people along the way. But the back part of my career really started to hit some stride, dotted to do some more C-suite stuff, got my hands on the steering wheel, and had some pretty remarkable success. Built a company, insurance company from the ground up. Started at zero. Today it's well over $1 billion. I got it to about a little under half a billion in about 20 to 25 million of EBITDA in about 3.5 years. Some of it M&A, some of it organic growth, but it was a great journey for me. I executed a turnaround on a small company that was deeply troubled. And by the way, you won't confuse me with Warren Buffett. So today, and this is obviously anybody listening. If you hear me ever in the future tout some company I'm going to as the next big thing, short the stock. Because chances are pretty good. I mucked it up. Not that I'm not bad at due diligence, but that boy, Murphy's Law. Wow, I've had at least four scenarios that I went into, and it's four where you wake up 90, 120 days later and go, oh my God, what did I do? And I'm not talking about, this, it's the old adage is a lot different at the breakfast table isn't in the moonlight. It's not like, oh, the executive lunchroom isn't what I expected. No. I mean, literally like, oh my God, are we going to make payroll kinds of things, and really deep-seated issues that came tumbling out, and so some scary stuff. But of course, it taught me how to firefight. I got through all of that. I made an impact. I turned companies around, and so and then most recently, a couple years back, I was CEO of a payer provider services company. There were really three of them. Put them together, redid the cap table, negotiated some debt, navigated through COVID, and these are all companies in various stages of repair, and grew the EBITDA 40% in the first year and the revenue 20. And so by affect, I'm a builder and a fixer. That's what I love to do. I've never been a maintenance person. So I always joke that if you give me a job that's maintenance, the first thing I'm going to do is break it so I can make it more interesting. Because I love the challenge. And there's an old joke by Stephen Wright. He says, if you ever have that experience of leaning back in your chair and that moment you feel like you're going to fall, I feel that way all the time, right? So anyway, I'm motivated by that. And when I left the last role, this will take us up to what I'm doing currently. Friends, family, everybody got together and said, instead of kind of going back into doing more of these outward bound ventures, why don't we figure out a way to help and touch as many companies as we can? Instead of just finding one and, applying our wares, let's pool our resources. And so we reformatted and relaunched Sunstone Management Advisors. And our mission in life is built around one thing and one thing only, is to help companies get discernibly better,
Okay.
improve their value. And there's a wide range of things we can do it. And I have the pleasure of working with 9 or 10 other operating partners, all with different skill sets. And basically, we work with investors and management teams to help companies just get discernibly better. Sometimes it's growth strategies, margin expansion, operation improvements, strategic alignments, strategy, new market entry, or it's fractional leadership. And so we relaunched that about 2 years ago, and our tagline is "Go Beyond." So we say that our mission in life is we want to help companies and exec teams and leadership that have an inspiration. They want to be extraordinary, and we want to go on that journey with them, help them be extraordinary. And that's frankly a lot of fun. What that does is that we work with companies that are motivated, and we don't work with companies that aren't. So if it's a management team and status quo is okay, God bless you, good for you. That's not our thing. So and anyway, so that's, and the Sunstone, just a little bit of a background. When I hung out my shingle the first time, I went out to my family. I said, "Okay, name Daddy's company." And my daughter came out and said, "A Sunstone is a Viking navigation device, originally thought to be mythological. That there was this mythological thing that the Vikings would deploy long before there were, never mind GPS, there were no compasses right around the start of the Common Era. So." But the sunstone allowed them to see the sun in the sky when it wasn't readily apparent, either behind clouds or below the horizon. And so Sunstone Management Advisors were like, "Oh, that's cool. We're going to
That
help our
is
clients
cool.
find their sun." So anyway, and I'm a history major, and so any chance I can get to sprinkle that, that major into the work I'm doing. So
Yeah.
that's it. So Sunstone Management Advisors, it's what we do. It's helping companies get discernibly better. And we've got a wide range of folks on the team, different skill sets, and we can come land, sea, and air and help companies get better. And that's what we do. And that's how I got to where I am now.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. And I love that how you came up with the name, that your daughter helped come up with that. That's what that I
Yeah, she
love
got
that.
$500 out of the deal. It was
Good
like I
for
said, a
her.
$500 thing. Of course, the rest of her siblings were grumpy that their names weren't taken, but right,
Okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set,
right,
Mike, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit, and I'm going to reiterate the question around relationships for the
yep.
benefit of our listeners here. So, Mike, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your
Right.
experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. And And sometimes it's hard to find one. Frankly, I've had the great benefit of having multiple people along the course of my career make impacts on me and help me. I'm going to focus on one and a half, I think, for today.
Okay.
But before I go in there, I think I also want to lead up and pull in two or three other people that it wasn't so much the relationship, it was their advice and counsel on how to approach the relationship that was so critical, right? And so a mindset that I had so that when the opportunity came and I met this person who impacted me so, I was ready for them to impact me. So some of it is just not, you just don't bump into them, right? You've got to be open to what it is that they're bringing at you. So the first thing is, and again, over here, I believe it was my father. When I started to work, he had never gone to college, and never had a suit. I was always a blue collar working my way through college. And when I went to start my first day, he said to me, he'd worked 35 years in corporate America. Had gotten out of the military and was going to be an electrician, and then ultimately found his way in the computers and became a computer programmer. And he said, this is my advice. This is how I've survived 35 years in corporate America. And the insights he gave me are also instructive in terms of the relationships and how you look at relationships. So the first thing he said to me was out earn your pay, and in an equal partnership, give 51%. So always be on the giving side, not on the taking side. And he said, it's your pride. He said, it doesn't matter what's going on at the job. If you're not happy, you're grumpy. You always out earn your pay, and you always, in partnerships, give 51%. And the great Bill Russell had a great corollary to that. His father said to him, William, I don't care what you do. If you become a ditch digger, you become the world's greatest ditch digger that ever existed. So they come from miles around to watch you dig ditches. Why? Because you become more valuable to the job than the job is to you, and you can tell your boss to go to hell. So that was his kind of angle on that. So the first thing that my father said was out earn your pay, equal partnership, give 51%. Second, he said, don't spend other people's money. Don't get caught up in kind of counting what's yours and mine and all that and green-eyed, goddess of envy. Stay out of that. Stay focused on the organization and don't get caught up in that. And the third thing he said is make sure your boss knows who you are, what you're doing, and if you're doing something that matters, you're doing something well, and you're with the right organization, everything works itself out. So when I started my career journey, I had these kind of precepts in mind. And that, frankly, enabled me to set the stage for some of the impact that others were able to have on me because I had a mindset of giving, not taking. I had a mindset of not what's mine is mine and yours is negotiable. I had a different thought process. So the other two quick things I would share before I get into the person or two that I want to talk about. When I started, I had a career Sherpa pull me. So I was a very young man, and he said, your career, and it had a big impact on me, you need to do as many different things as you can. Don't get locked into a single, kind of the road off and travel. Do lots of different things because as you build your career, the more things you do, the more diverse you become, the better you're going to be, and the more well-rounded you're going to be, the more valuable you're going to be when you get into prime earning years. It's a tendency when you're known to kind of chase the big dollars, right? Oh, I got the big job, doing more of the same thing. But if you can check the box with, okay, I had a finance job, I had a sales job, I had an operations job, I had this, I had that, and it may not be the most glorious, jobs that you have, but you're building out your portfolio. And then the other thing that goes with that is the more different things you do, the more excited you are while you're doing those things and you're learning. So diversification. And the third thing is, which is about the nature of relationships in general. I was doing a sales pitch, and it was a very famous person on the other side of the table. And I was in the role of playing a salesperson, and he said he had a great Texas drawl. He said, I'm going to stop you right there. He said, you're saying a lot of words. He said, and I get in trouble for saying this. He said, but there are two kinds of relationships. There's personal relationships, there's institutional. A lot of people get them confused. He said, a personal relationship, we're not keeping score. I have a personal relationship with my wife, right? I don't get up every day and keep score, but a relationship, a professional relationship is built on one thing and one thing only, meeting our obligations to one another real or perceived. So now you're saying a lot of pretty words, and I'm thinking there's a lot of obligations that are going off in my head. Now, don't get me wrong, I can go to your lake house, get drunk and have a good time. You can come to my lake house, get drunk and have a good time. But if we're not meeting our obligations to one another, we don't have a relationship. So early on in my career, I saw people confuse that. They confuse, having a good time, going to each other's lake house, but the relationships are built on obligations to one another, right? And you have to meet those obligations. And so another key thing. Um, so I'm going to talk a little bit about somebody that really impacted me. Was I think it was the longest I had a boss. I had him for about 6 years,
Okay.
and then if I have time, I can share another one as well. And I came out of an environment where I was, it's a kind of a home office environment, and it was the old stress management model where you figure out what you can do and you control yourself, and the harsh externals, you can't do anything about. And so, a couple of projects here and there going, oh, it didn't happen because somebody in HQ did this and it had nothing to do with me. And he straight out and goes, what? What are you talking about? Good people find a way to make things happen. You either, and it's back to Yoda. There is no try, Skywalker. There is do or do not,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And for me, it was like, oh, well, but it wasn't my fault, but I can't control the person in HQ, or I can't do this or I can't do that. He said, you can do whatever you set your mind to. Sometimes it was hard. Right? I was like, well, blah, blah, but the more he kind of, basically, good people find a way to make this happen. So you either bring it to me done, or it's not, and I don't want to hear anything else. I could care less. I don't care what your trials and tribulations were. I don't care, what happened or didn't happen. And then suddenly, what happened to me is, and I used to joke that every day was an interview. And it felt that way. Every day was an interview. I had to go prove myself. But it was also opened me up in a way like I'm empowered. I have to
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about everything. Nothing is like outside my scope. And then you start to think about everything and not inside your scope, and you're focused on the mission. You suddenly find yourself thinking in a very different way, and suddenly all the external things that you thought weren't or couldn't be touched. Oh no, wait a minute. I got a strategy for that. I got a tactic for that. And so, and the great thing about him was, because he believed that. I mean, he had a very, very simple way that he looked at his life. I mean, we were in a sales organization, we got paid commissions, and he would say, how I judge success, this year's W-2, last year's W-2. So I don't need to oversimplify. If I make more money this year than I did last year, success. If I don't, not success. He said, 20 years, never been not successful. So it's that kind of narrow and focus and that kind of drive. I mean, I used to joke. I said, if I left my car parked in a spot and a tree fell on it and I missed a meeting, that's my fault. It's like
Huh.
you start to get empowered in a way, and then obviously he was a tough and demanding boss. He didn't micromanage you. He didn't get up in your grill. But you either got it done or you didn't. Back to the great Yoda. There is no try. There
Yeah.
is either do or do not. And
Yeah.
that that mindset, which just took me out of my comfort zone, was an amazing thing for me. The second thing that he did for me was around leadership. And I was used to this kind of hierarchical thing that said, okay, I got a business card, says I'm Mikey, the vice president, I'm a big shot, and everybody's, kind of falling in line, like in the military, right? I'm a general. Ooh, sure. And then in a sales organization, but this one, salespeople could care less about what your title is, right? In fact, many times the salespeople were paid more than the managers do. They were the rock stars. They were the ones driving. And so you go in from, I got an org chart that says I'm in charge. I got a business card that says I'm a big shot. And these salespeople won't give me the time of day. I'm just useless to them. And I was struggling with it. And he basically said, you're you're not the star, right? You want to be the star. You're not the star. They're the star, right? And I said, oh, and at that time I said, okay, I'll be, football analogy, I'll be on the blocking line. I just don't want to be the water boy. He said, okay, but you're going to be a servant to your people, and You are going to lead because they're going to give you the juice to lead because the value you bring them to help them in their business, not because of the org chart, not because of your title, because in fact, you're not bringing them any value. You're useless to them, and that's what you're getting. If you want to bring value to them, you don't show your teeth and say, "Oh, I'm the alpha wolf." You demonstrate the value. You become a servant to them. And then it was again another like, whoa, so the org doesn't matter, so the title doesn't matter. And then suddenly when I started to flip around and started to think about how do I help my people? How do I demonstrate value? And I went from, and I remember when I first walked into my first management job where I had my own office, one of the top sales people said to me, "You just stay in your office, Mr. Manager, and make sure we got pencils and papers, and that everybody's happy. We'll take care of everything else." I said, "Okay." Now, a few years before, as a younger me, I would have gone, "I'm in charge. What are you talking about?" Within 3 months, anything of any importance, he had me at the meeting because he knew I could bring him value. So those two things, more than anything else, that kind of empowerment, good people find a way to make things happen, and there is no try. There is only do or do not. And then
Yeah.
the second thing is about bringing value and leadership coming from the will of the governed, based on the value that you can bring them.
Okay.
They were amazing lessons to me, and been refined and honed and stayed with me throughout my entire career.
Yeah. Wow. Mike, you have shared so much there. I want to go back and listen to this recording and take notes. I took a couple notes, but I'm
Right.
trying to just be present here. And, but I am definitely going to go back and listen to this and take more notes and stuff because, man, there's so much amazing stuff in there, just valuable lessons that you were imparted throughout your career and stuff. And,
Yeah.
and man, that is some powerful stuff for sure. If you look, I want to just dig just a little bit deeper.
Sure.
And so if I want you to look at an example, and I'm sure you can come up with a number of examples, but as I'm kind of framing this question, something's just going to come top of mind for you, and that'll be the one you'll talk about. So if you're looking at this, I want you to consider a time where you personally got to make a really substantial impact. And maybe it even surprised you a little bit. And you were just like, wow, look at that. And, but you also know that would have never happened if not for your relationship with whoever that was that you've been talking about in all these examples. What's an example of something like that, Mike?
Yeah, I described a little bit up front that, I've gone into four scenarios where it was, life threatening, and there were a lot of things that had gone askew. Each and every one of those scenarios, um, we recovered from and got to a better place, because I had this mindset from before, right? This will to win, this sense of responsibility and leadership. Um, I'd say the first one, it might have, and they probably go in order. I go to take over my first office as a sales manager. Still, young person, and we're in a market that's under a lot of heat and a lot of trouble, and we're not doing well. And it's home office is talking about closing us down, and of course, when you're in a non-performing kind of franchise inside a large organization, you're not exactly getting fed a lot of resource. In fact, you're getting told well, we need to harvest this, right? We need to cut this and cut that. But meanwhile, you got a team that you're dealing with, and they're watching, you know, oh, this one left, we're not replacing them. And they're watching, and you're not growing, you're not thriving. And so you walk into that scenario and you go, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And it wasn't obvious to me where the success lied, from a fundamentals. But flash forward, I found, through long hours, found a strategy that was going to work, that I thought was going to work. And then I went out to the team. And so, in a moment of inspired madness, I said, look, we're just, I don't know, it was 50, 60 of us, in this office. And we're just part of the wheels in a cog. And so and HQ doesn't care about us, which is fine. We don't need to concern ourselves with it. But I think there's a path forward. And everybody said, yeah, that looks exciting. We're gonna go on this remarkable journey that we're gonna spend the time and energy to build this, but we don't have any resources to do it. Everybody's got full-time jobs. We were talking about expanding our markets, going out and recruiting physicians and doctors and all, and we had no. And so I said, but we all know that's the path forward. Yeah. So I said, is there a way for us as a group, if we just 50, 60 of us come together and figure this out on our own? At face value, people would say, no, you can't do it. You got 50, 60 people that are already overworked because HQ keeps cutting back your resources. You're barely keeping the store open. How are you going to embark on this major effort to go out and do all this? And we did it. I mean, we called it Doctor Storm. We pulled people from all in. We had salespeople working in the network operations, or the medical directors recruiting. Everybody just got together, and I said, think of this not as the big company we're working with. This is our health plan. And so I brought it down small, and then we flash forward, a year, 18 months later, we grew our local market share 30%. We had record earnings. And people were calling me. It's just, I remember the CEO of the company go, you guys, we were the Massachusetts Miracle. How did you do it? And to a large extent, we flew under the radar. But what I had was, certainly and there were bumps along the way. Like there were times when we were challenged. We're like, oh my God, we're not going to make it. And you've got to do that, kind of stand on the pulpit and said, we're going to Baghdad. We can do this. Come with the journey. Now, not everybody could do it, right? Some people said, this is too much. We're not going to make it. And I go, okay, I understand, respect, love you to death. And I'll get somebody else will come in and go, let's do this. So anyway, the learning about leadership and the being, the voice of the will of the governed, and overcoming adversity, and yes, if instead of no, because we were able to do some remarkable things. That was right out of the gate. And again, that was another one where you get in there, oh my God, they're closing the office down. I just got the promotion and they're going to close the office down, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And the one thing I want to add too, which is an appropriate caveat, I had remarkable people, right? None of this journey goes on because, it's, Mikey the dope. No, I had remarkable people who signed up. Now I was able to, I did my job as the leader to organize it and attack it and inspire, but they're the ones who did it. I mean, I just, to this day, I look back on that time and the people that I was, blessed to work with. I mean, the combination of what we were able to do was remarkable. I would not have been able to do it on my own. I would not have been able to do it certainly without the talent of the people I had. So, yeah, that was first one, right out of the gate after leaving that one particular leader that I described.
What a beautiful example that was, I mean, and
Thanks.
amazing, amazing. And you're right, it's like the people that we surround ourselves, man, that makes all the difference in the world. Having just people who are just absolutely world class at what they do and using their God-given gifts and abilities. And yeah, powerful,
Well, I
powerful.
mean, what was fascinating was, so the operations I ran, I was running basically an HMO, it was a health plan. So I had a medical director, nurses, and all the network kind of clinical operations. And then I had a sales office that was selling, it was a traditional and group insurance sales office. And the two of them never, I mean, they were in different locations. But when we pulled them together and we started to say, how can we collaborate with each other? And suddenly the salespeople were helping the provider relations people with recruiting, and then suddenly salespeople were like, wow, and they brought a whole nother set of skills to help, because recruiting is really sales. And so we were going into big hospitals and saying, hey, sign up for our network. And our best salespeople who were used to selling employers suddenly are sitting first chair trying to convince some of the major teaching hospitals in downtown Boston to sign up for it. And we had different skill sets and they were collaborating. And I don't know, it was nuts and it was so joyous. And we got it done. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. I really appreciate you, Mike, taking the time to have this conversation today and just speak so openly and so candidly. And this, I love every single interview that I have ever done for this podcast, and we're coming up on about 300 right now.
Wow.
But I will tell you, for me personally, this interview, like I said, I want to just go back and listen to this because I'm going to take so much more in.
Yeah.
And so thank you
Oh,
for that, Mike.
my pleasure. Yeah. I mean, you know, at the end of the day too, is that you go back with a sense of humility, and gratitude for the people that, shaped me along the way. And there are many of them. And I kind of give the one example, but as long as you're on that journey and you have that sense of humility, but you also have that sense of empowerment and excitement about what you
Yeah,
can do as opposed to being afraid of what you can't do.
that's right.
That leaves you open to somebody suggesting something to you that was completely foreign. I mean, somebody telling me that something that had at face value had nothing to do with me, that I didn't impact what I was, that I thought I couldn't impact, was so foreign to me. But now, flash forward now, it's like, no, there is no try. There's only do or do not. And if you
Yeah,
have that mindset, and it invigorates you, and then you surround yourself with people that have that mindset, and you all want to give 51%, magic. It's magic. It's great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, Mike, I want to make sure, anybody that's been listening to this and they're like, man, Kevin, wow, I really love Mike. I love the way Mike shows up. I really appreciate some of the stuff that he shared, and maybe they'd like to even find out more about what you do and all
Sure.
that. Any websites, any resources we can share
Absolutely.
with?
Yes. Sunstonemanagementadvisors.com.
Okay.
Yeah, come right in, and I know we'll put a link in the
Yes.
podcast, and also if somebody wants to connect with me, they can. And we have a wide range of things that we do. We can do cultural mapping. We can help with this very thing that we described there, coaching, leadership, that sort of
Okay.
thing. But we also help, because the other part of that I described that story was a really well thought out, careful, executed strategy. It wasn't just the leadership and the team building. It was also organized. It was, we had a very disciplined way around we approached it. So, it's we're able to help companies in a wide range of ways.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, Mike, once again, I really want to just express my appreciation, gratitude to you for taking the time to have this conversation today and share from your heart. I am like really excited to get this out there and share it
Thank
with a
you.
lot of other entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs. Any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Yeah, I mean, uh, I hope that I hope the story. I mean, I'm again history major. I I find inspiration in stories. I find inspiration in, it's a little bit like The Hobbit, little people who accomplish great things. I consider myself a hobbit to some degree, right? I'm not some, captain. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm not Bill Gates. I'm just some dude that was a history major from Holy Cross, happened to have some good folks away and along the way help me out. And I hope my story helps people, that they get something out of it. I've been blessed because somebody took the time to be patient with me and help me, get this kind of mindset. And of course, I've been blessed along the way to have great teams to work with. But I hope that people get something out of it and they learn from it, and somewhere along the line, I got a nugget, a story was told, or some great history thing about what somebody overcome that it set off in my head. Gee, I can do that. And
Yeah.
I hope my story helps people.
Yeah. Amen. I'm with you. I'm
Yep.
with you. Well, Mike, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this
Thanks for
conversation. I
having
really
me.
appreciate. Absolutely, my
Yeah.
honor, my honor.
Great.